The film opens with a news report providing an overview of an alien invasion on Earth. Amidst the chaos and despair, a significant turn of events occurs when an allied human army, equipped with advanced mechanical suits, secures a decisive victory at Verdun. A key figure in this triumph is Rita, a soldier celebrated for her extraordinary feat of eliminating hundreds of alien creatures known as mimics. Among the voices promoting Rita and the war effort is Major William Cage of the U.S. Army, featured prominently in the newsreels. The narrative shifts as Cage awakens during a helicopter ride to London, anticipating a meeting with General Brigham, the Western Allied commander. Cage believes the general intends to enlist his help in enhancing the military's public image. However, upon arrival, General Brigham unexpectedly orders Cage to join the first wave of Allied troops set to land in France, assigning him the task of providing on-the-ground media coverage. Cage, having no experience in combat, desperately attempts to blackmail General Brigham through the media to avoid being sent to the front lines. Initially, it seems like the general might give in, but he quickly orders Cage's arrest instead. Cage attempted to run, but a soldier tased him. Cage later regains consciousness in the afternoon, finding himself on a pile of duffel bags at Heathrow Airport, which has been converted into a bustling military base. Confused, he got up and asked about his surroundings. A gruff sergeant thrusts boots into his hands, calling him a maggot, before Sergeant Farrell takes charge of him. Sergeant Farrell told Cage he knew all of his crimes and stated that he deserved what was being done to him. General Brigham has sent explicit orders to Farrell to demote Cage from officer to private. This demotion comes as a shock to Cage, who finds himself thrust into the ranks of an unconventional group of soldiers known as the J Squad. These soldiers are notorious for their eccentric personalities and unconventional tactics. The squad members include Ford, Griff, Kimmel, Skinner, and Nance, each with their unique quirks and skills. As Cage is introduced to the J Squad, he discovers them in the middle of a gambling session, which is promptly interrupted by Farrell. As a disciplinary measure, Farrell forces the squad to eat the cards they were playing with and then directs them to prepare Cage for the upcoming mission. They all got into mechanical suits. The next day is the day of the invasion, and Cage is nervous about it. He is also hastily fitted into a mechanical suit, but the members of J Squad, believing he will die quickly, don't even bother to show him how to take his gun out of safety mode. In the aircraft, the squad members relentlessly tease and pick on Cage, heightening his anxiety to unbearable levels. They kept talking about how quickly he would die. Cage asked how he was going to take the safety off his weapon, but he didn't get an answer. Just as they are about to drop from the aircraft onto the French coast, the back of their airship explodes, causing the squad to drop down prematurely. What was meant to be a surprise operation to retake Europe quickly turned into a disaster. The mimics are unexpectedly well prepared, ambushing the human forces with brutal efficiency. The chaos on the battlefield is overwhelming, and the human soldiers are slaughtered mercilessly by the mimics. The planned invasion, intended to be a turning point in the war, devolves into a massacre, leaving the Allied forces in disarray. Sergeant Rita also makes it to the beach, but tragically, she is killed within just a few minutes. The remaining members of J Squad quickly meet the same fate. Cage, still in a state of shock and barely clinging to life, attempts to reach for a claymore mine. Just then, a massive blue mimic attacks him, and with a single explosion, both Cage and the blue mimic are obliterated. Cage's lifeless body ends up drenched in the alien creature's blood. The scene shifts to Cage awakening in a state of panic, lying on top of some duffel bags. The same sergeant is there, calling him a maggot, and Farrell once again takes him back to the J Squad. He went back to the aircraft and went through the same teasing and banter. He then went down and started fighting. He wakes up once more after being killed while trying to save Rita. This time he tried to explain everything to Sergeant Farrell, but they didn't believe him. Inside, he tried to make himself believable by naming the members of the J Squad, but he ended up being sent to the ship with a tape on his mouth. Each time he is deployed, he dies and then reawakens on the duffel bags. Despite Cage's frantic efforts to explain the situation and warn them about the impending mimic ambush. As Cage repeats this cycle, he gradually becomes more skilled at attempting to rescue the J Squad members and Rita. On one occasion, he manages to survive long enough to save Rita from a ship that is about to explode, which would have destroyed the incoming mimics. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Rita asks Cage to find her again when he wakes up, hoping they can avoid dying once more. Cage awakens once again on the duffel bags, but this time he decides to work more closely with Sergeant Farrell and the rest of the J Squad to buy himself some time to locate Rita. After several failed attempts to sneak away unnoticed, Cage finally succeeds in escaping and tracks down Rita in a training hangar filled with training drones. Initially, Rita is distant and unresponsive, but after Cage explains the dire situation, she agrees to take him to a weapons development bay where her colleague, Dr. Carter, works. Dr. Carter is an expert in mimic biology. Upon reaching the weapons bay, Rita reveals to Cage that she was also trapped in a time loop at Verdun. She explains that this loop was triggered by the blood of a powerful alpha mimic. Dr. Carter, who previously researched mimics, had a theory that all mimics are merely extensions of a central controlling entity known as the Omega alien. To track down this Omega, Carter developed a device that, when inserted into an alpha mimic, can pinpoint the Omega's location. As Cage absorbs this new information, Rita stresses the importance of surviving the upcoming invasion before they can attempt to find the Omega. To prepare him, she puts Cage through rigorous training, often killing him when he sustains injuries so he can reset and try again from the duffel bags. During one training session, when Cage is severely injured, Rita advises him to ensure he dies completely rather than risk being accidentally revived. She explains that if a looper receives a transfusion of human blood, the time loop is broken, which is what happened to her. After one of his deaths, Cage experiences a mental vision in which he learns that the Omega is located at a dam in Germany. Rita and Carter come to believe that Cage's visions might be a result of him having become an alpha mimic himself after being infected with the blue blood. This revelation prompts Cage and Rita to focus intently on surviving the upcoming invasion. On the beach, their combat skills improve significantly, but despite their progress, they continue to face death repeatedly, and Cage finds himself trapped in the loop once more. As he experiences the repetitive cycle of witnessing Rita's death, his emotional state begins to deteriorate, and he becomes increasingly attached to her. In one of the loops, feeling defeated, Cage decides to escape the base and heads to a bar, hoping to break free from the loop. However, his attempt fails as the mimics find and kill him, sending him back to the beginning of the loop. After enduring numerous failures and deaths, Cage and Rita eventually manage to make their way inland. They discover a helicopter in a farmhouse, but when Rita realizes Cage's intent to persuade her to stay behind, she confronts him. Cage confesses that they have previously looped at this farmhouse multiple times, with Rita dying each time. He tries to prevent her death by planning to go alone. When Rita questions why her fate matters to him, Cage is at a loss for words. Despite his growing feelings for her, it becomes clear that Rita is primarily focused on the mission. Shocked by the revelation of Cage's feelings, Rita deliberately sets up a situation that leads to their deaths. In the subsequent loop, Cage decides to forego seeking out Rita and instead ventures alone towards the German dam. However, Cage's attempt to reach the dam doesn't go as planned. He finds nothing there, as the Omega is not present, and he is ambushed by an alpha mimic. The alpha tries to strip him of his time resetting ability, but Cage takes drastic measures and deliberately drowns himself to escape. In the following loop, Cage, Rita and Carter regroup to piece together the information they've gathered. As they analyze the clues, things begin to fall into place. They discover that the apparent victory at Verdun was a deception orchestrated by the Omega Overmind. This ruse was designed to lure human forces into Europe, where they would be ambushed and ultimately destroyed. With this newfound understanding, they realize that Carter's device, which had previously gotten him dismissed from his job, is their only remaining hope. However, Carter reveals that the device is incomplete and missing crucial equipment. Despite this setback, the team now has a clear direction. Rita and Cage focus on obtaining the necessary equipment, which is held by General Brigham. After enduring numerous challenges and failed attempts, Cage and Rita manage to infiltrate the Ministry of Defense. There, Cage successfully persuades General Brigham to hand over Carter's prototype device, which is crucial for locating the Omega. They successfully obtain the device and implant it into Cage's leg. This action reveals the true location of the Omega. It is located beneath the Louvre Pyramid in Paris. As they try to make their escape from the Allied headquarters, their getaway car crashes, and the airbag deploys, knocking Rita unconscious before she can take action against Cage. In the next scene, Cage finds himself waking up in a hospital. He realizes that he is no longer stuck in the time loop due to receiving a blood transfusion, which has permanently removed his ability to reset time. Rita manages to free them, but with no more loops and only a few hours remaining before the invasion begins, Cage heads back to the base. There he finds the remaining members of the J Squad and recruits them for the mission to eliminate the Omega before the invasion commences. Upon reaching the Louvre, the mimics attack their airship, leading to a fierce firefight in which half of the J Squad members are killed. Cage, Rita, and the 3 surviving J Squad members decide to use the remaining engine power to guide the airship into the museum. The remaining J Squad members sacrifice themselves to buy time for Cage and Rita to reach the museum. Once inside, Rita informs Cage that she will create a distraction for the patrolling alpha mimic, while Cage is tasked with planting a grenade belt on the Omega, which is submerged underwater at the bottom of the Louvre. Before Rita goes off to distract the alpha mimic that stands between them and the submerged Omega, she shares a heartfelt kiss with Cage, expressing her gratitude for how far he has managed to get her. After a brief pursuit, the alpha captures and kills Rita, leaving Cage to dive underwater to reach the Omega. The alpha follows him into the water and stabs Cage, but Cage remains determined. He manages to pull out all the grenade pins and drops the belt onto the Omega. The Omega detonates in a massive explosion, destroying itself and all the mimics along with it. As Cage succumbs to his injuries, The Omega's blood contaminates him. He then wakes up in shock, finding himself on a helicopter heading to London, but this time it is the morning before the invasion. He realizes he is now in an alternate timeline. In this new reality, Cage watches the news where a general announces that following a mysterious explosion in Paris, all the mimics have been eradicated, and human forces will begin their sweep through Europe the next day. Upon arriving at the base, Cage is relieved to see all members of the J-Squad alive and well. He seeks out Rita, but when he finds her, she does not recognize him and greets him with the same aloofness she did during their initial encounters in the loops. She asks what he wants and Cage simply smiles at her, embracing the new beginning. With that, the movie ends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching. See you next time.